So today, welcome everybody. We've got Kathy Flett on here. She's with the WIPA, or Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta, and she's been doing a lot of work in Alberta there. She started off with Wexit and now the Maverick Party, but has since gone into this one here. So just getting her little thoughts on how things are turning in the West here, and we'll get her thoughts on the throne speech afterwards and how that's going to affect us in the West. Remember to hit that little like and subscribe button there and notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And without further ado, here's Kathy. I'll give her the chance to introduce herself here. So just tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, interests, that kind of thing.
Sure. Thank you, Tony. As you said, Kathy Flett is who I am. I am right now working with the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta, or WIPA for short. That's kind of a big mouthful, so we just all like to say WIPA. Born and raised Alberta girl. Very proud to be married, blessed with two sons who have each blessed me with two amazing daughters-in-law. And a couple of years ago, my oldest son and his first lady made me a G-mama. So our little family is growing and giving me plenty of reasons to want to see some real positive change around here. Growing up in northern Alberta, it was oil and gas that put food in my tummy and shoes on my feet. And it was exactly oil and gas that made sure that our family, once we had children, were looked after. It's oil and gas that's making sure my grandchild is looked after. Also, growing up in northern Alberta, surrounded by farms. So you get a real appreciation and a respect as to what goes into putting food on our tables and how that all goes. And it's an unsung, they were unsung heroes in our province that really, we need to focus on them. And we need to make sure that we all understand how everybody in Alberta literally works together to make things happen for each other. And today, my husband and I, are small business owners. Quite honestly, we're sick of being raped and pillaged by a government structure that favors one part of our country over the other. And that is what really turned my interest sharply into politics. So I would have, 5 years ago, I would have never ever imagined myself in this place. But here we are.
Cool, and I must say your grandchild is adorable.
He's cute. I know. I brag about him all the time.
I know. I love seeing the pictures. So you'd originally been a part of the Wexit movement before joining the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta. What led to you kind of getting into the separation movement in general?
It actually started years ago. In my mid-20s, early to mid-20s, there was kind of this resurrection of the separatist movement. And even though at that time I didn't really follow politics, I can't even say I knew exactly who was who. I did follow enough to understand that an independent Alberta wasn't a bad idea. And so I kind of continued to watch, continued to follow. And then Alberta had this boom and nobody had a day off, and it kind of went off to the sidelines because we were busy working and raising a family and all of the rest. So it's always kind of been there in the back of my mind. Then 2015 happened, and that was it for me. I knew Alberta was done if something didn't change, and nothing changed. Nothing changed at all. And then as we were ramping up to the election in 2019, I knew that we were in for another Liberal government, and there was just not going to be any recovering from that at all. And in fact, I even remember I was holding my grandson that night on election night. I was babysitting, and I just looked at Neil and I said, "That's it. We have to do something. We have to. We cannot sit at home and do nothing and just allow what's in this province and all the blessings that are here go to waste." And so we decided to get involved, and that's literally what happened. We kind of looked around to see what was out there and made our way to what was then Wexit, and then my journey took me to what is now WIPA, and we're ready to go. Literally.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into the next question, and it's kind of a loaded question I like to ask people in the West here. How do you feel the Liberals have done in in terms of running the country?
You know, I was so grateful that you gave me these questions just to give me some time to think about them before I answered. And my answer to that question might be a little bit different than what most would say. It's quite easy to say, well, the Liberals are destroying this country. They're running it into the ground, and kind of all of this laundry list of complaints and all the damage that they've done. Some of the research that I have done into the different people that are involved in the Liberal Party, I'm not sure that that wasn't their plan to begin with. I think they had a plan and they executed that plan perfectly. And part of that plan, of course, was to destroy Albertans in the process. Between making sure that we can't get our oil to market, it caused companies to downsize, close, leave the province entirely. That was part of their plan. They executed it well. Then COVID shows up. I don't know if that was necessarily a part of their plan, but it sure played into it very, very well, which created another round of layoffs, granted across the country, but Alberta was already hurting. So this was the icing on the cake, and it finished off another 10,000 businesses in just 6 months. That's wild.
Yeah, how empty is Calgary right now?
Right? Exactly. And some estimates out there, this is mind-boggling to me because keep in mind we've got a population of about 4.3 to 4.5. It's the kind of, we're not at the end of the year yet, so the numbers are not quite solid, but it's right around there as our population is 4.3 to 4.5 million. There's estimates, and they're fairly solid estimates, that there are actually around 1 million Albertans out of work right now. And it doesn't show up in the stats because once you're not on EI, you're brushed off of those numbers. It's not counted anymore. So, how have the Liberals done? I think you could easily say mission accomplished. They did what they wanted to do. The breadwinner in the family has been chopped off at the knees, which is Alberta, and the rest of the country is going to feel the repercussions of that, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of,
Yeah, well, I don't have any doubt that there's, because Trudeau doesn't have the brains for half of what he's been doing, so I'm like, there's someone else pulling his strings, and I think we all know who that is, but if I say that, this video will get taken down, so I won't bother completing that thought.
Right.
So how does the mishandling, how has it affected Western Canada or Alberta in particular?
Well, what's interesting there is years ago, some of us that are a little bit further on in years will remember how that chant happened, the West wants in, the West wants in, right? And now it's reversed. It's the West wants out, the West wants out. And so looking at Alberta, it's really brought that back to the forefront. And even more so than ever before, because many of us have already been down this road a couple of times. We know it's not going to get any better. So that's one repercussion of it, one outcome of it. What's really interesting to me, and I don't know if anybody anticipated this, but the West wants in and the West wants out. Normally people look to Alberta, but it's not just an Alberta problem anymore. Saskatchewan's had a taste of what it's like to be a have province as opposed to a have not. And once you've had that taste of being a have province, you don't want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's possible. And so in the midst of this unity crisis, we've actually seen unification among the Western provinces. Now, what that looks like after those of us that want to be independent get to that place, I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But it is neat to see that I really believe what the Liberals meant to use to divide and conquer is actually bringing us together.
Yeah, it's unified the rest of us. Yeah, I think you're right there. I know Saskatchewan ourselves, like our economy is very, very diverse in terms of what we're doing. And I know the Saskatchewan Party has been really working to further that diversification. And I know Alberta hasn't in the past done quite as good as well at that. But I think that now Albertans are starting to see a little bit more that, that's needed, that diversification. I know this is kind of off the cuff, but is there any industries that you maybe think that Alberta could maybe get into that would help with that diversity?
Well, what's interesting is Alberta, we already were diversified. We were just terrible at bragging about it.
Oh.
You know what I mean? right? Like, because we've got oil and gas, everybody knows that. We've got farming and agriculture, everybody knows that. We've also got forestry, and people don't always know that. We've also got petrochemicals, which come out of the oil and gas part of it. Not everybody knows that. We've got stellar universities. Not everybody pays attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got projects out here where there's carbon capture going on. That's us.
That's huge.
Albertans
Yeah.
did that, right? And so we've got carbon capture going on, and it's fascinating. I got to watch this video about how it works, and they literally take the carbon, they somehow get it back into the ground where it came out of to begin with, and then they use that to put the pressure back in the ground to get the other resources back out. So it's this means of recycling. We're doing.
I don't know what her problem is.
Oh, good.
Um,
We are justified.
yeah, and I know too with the oil industry, like everybody just harps on them about being so terrible for the environment and all that, and it's just like, and it's not, because I've seen and I have friends who do tree planting and have done tree planting in the past, and it's huge with the oil industry. They leave those areas a lot nicer than when they first entered that area.
That's
So
it.
it,
Exactly.
so I think that that is something that as Canadians we really need to just bring to the forefront, especially Western Canadians, in these green people's minds, even though they don't want to hear it. And they would rather just have this pity party of, woe is me, feel bad for me. And it's just like, well, you're driving around like Elizabeth May in a Dodge Viper. Tell me that's good for the environment. And yeah, and what are all the parts for that vehicle? Even the green vehicles like the Tesla. Kudos for Tesla for finding ways to make environmentally friendly cars. Like, good for them. But all the parts that go into it, where do all those parts come from? They're not all green parts. No, a lot of that came from oil and petrol. And plastics and like all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, you're right. Like, it's amazing how people just forget about that kind of stuff.
They really do, and they do forget that we literally do have the cleanest energy on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Cleanest. So, to my mind, I don't understand why we're not pushing our products out across the world to get other countries to reduce their production, because they're the ones making the mess, not us.
Yep.
It's not us, it's them. And but Trudeau's got other plans, so
Yeah, it comes back to the puppet masters. Who's controlling all the money? I actually got a kick out of a Fox thing the other day where I watched where they mentioned George Soros, and oh my goodness, boom! Suddenly they're on their toes saying, "Oh, you don't need to bring him into this." I'm just like, the governor just said stuff that is proven fact. I don't get why would you jump all over him for that. But no, we can't talk about all these rich people controlling strings and stuff. Like, it's a joke. But that kind of leads into again the Western separation issue. I know it's been a hot button issue for many years for a lot of us in the West here especially, and I know Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta, that's kind of a main focus for them. It's right in the name. At a provincial level, what can you guys offer Albertans as a whole?
As a whole, what we can offer Albertans is actually the ability to choose what's best for Albertans. If you know what I mean? Like, none of us are career politicians. None of us have aspirations of running for prime minister one day. That's not even in our lexicon. We just want what's best for our family, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, our colleagues. That's what we offer to Albertans. It's we are literally by Albertans for Albertans. We're you. We're not plants from somewhere else. We're you. And so I think that homegrown feel to it, it doesn't get any better than that. We're in this all together. I mean, not the COVID thing, but we're in this mess, together, and we'll get out together.
Yeah, I think Albertans were in Saskatchewan, then were using that before COVID even hit.
Exactly.
Another thing where they can't come up with something new, just like them stealing Joe Biden's lines, which Joe Biden has stolen from other people, but the Build Back Better kind of thing. I'm just like, why is no one talking about that theft of a
Mhm.
motto. Why can they not come up with their own their own motto? So I know you guys have been focused mainly on helping ease Alberta's woes at the provincial level. How do you plan to go about accomplishing that goal of trying to really focus on helping Albertans?
The first thing that we're going to do is, well, very first thing we're doing now is putting pressure on the government that's in power right now provincially. We are limited because we don't have a seat in the ledge at all. Not to say we don't want one, we just don't have one right now. So what we're doing right now is putting a lot of pressure on to get some changes, to get some things done, to get some things going, so that our premier remembers who voted him in. It was not anybody in Ottawa, it was Albertans. So that's the first thing we're trying really, really hard to do is really kind of keep his feet to the fire as much as possible. Our mantra that we want to see happen is to get our house in order. And this is something you'll hear our interim leader Paul Hinman say all the time, is to get our house in order. And we do that by taking control of what should have been in our control all along, like literally since 1905. And that, first thing, police force, pension plan, that should all be Alberta based. Every province, in fact, I think should have that as a provincial jurisdiction, not certainly not a federal jurisdiction. Employment insurance, bring that in-house. Healthcare, tax collection, bring all of that under our jurisdiction, our control. And then that just automatically removes the tentacles from Ottawa. Once these things are in our purview, those ties are cut. Now they don't have that control over us anymore because we're looking after ourselves. So when we get to that place, and this is much of this, unless Kenny actually does some of it, and I don't know, he's so busy creating committees to study it all, whatever. If he does some of this heavy lifting for us, that's fantastic. Oh my gosh, like that's great. If he doesn't, that's fine. Albertans will make a choice in 2023 or maybe even a little bit sooner, and we'll go in and we'll do that. We'll make sure all of that's done. We'll make sure that our friends, our family, our neighbors, our colleagues are looked after in-house. And this will help to show those Albertans that are still a little bit nervous about this whole independence idea, we really can do this. And we're going to be just fine. In fact, once it's all said and done and the dust settles, we'll be more than fine. So that's what our goal is to achieve.
Yeah, adversity makes you stronger. So that's definitely something that Western Canadians, we definitely need to not forget that. And with the suicide rates increasing, I know that's something that we really need to drive home to people that, that adversity is what makes you stronger. And I know we've all gone through our adversities and you come out a better person in the end. And one thing I know we touched on was kind of the economy, and you'd mentioned kind of the market issue. How does your party plan to get Albertan products to the market? Not just Canadian market, but like a global market.
Yeah, well, much of it already is, right? Like 70% of our oil goes already to the States. So it's already happening. Our canola is already going out. Our beef and pork and chicken and all of that is already going out. So what changes is now the Alberta government is at that negotiating table, negotiating on behalf of Albertans, not Canadians. So it's just a matter of getting in there and just changing the signatures basically on those trade negotiations and on those agreements.
So kind of on that note too, it kind of segues into the next question I have for you here, and that is, what is your party's end goal? Like, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, independence. It's in the name. So that's that. However, really, as a party, that's where our heart is. That's what we want to see happen. However, this is a vote that Albertans have to make, not us. So our goal as a party is to prepare and position our province for independence. Once that's accomplished, we go back to Albertans and say, okay, guys, we've done everything that needs to be done in order to ensure every success. Now you decide. We're here to serve you. You decide. Do you want us to stay in Confederation and continue to get raped and pillaged? Or shall we go it alone and really make sure that our future is secure? And Albertans will vote. And if the majority vote to stay, then we stay. And some of us, there might be a bit of an exodus because we don't want to stay.
Yeah.
But if the majority vote to leave, and I very, very firmly believe that's exactly what's going to happen, then we take that next step and we go. And we become an independent nation. And that's exactly where I get really excited, is thinking about what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's going to be changing over the next few years here, especially. So what is your role now in the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta?
So right now I do sit on the board of directors, or the board of governors, for the party, and I am the chief financial officer is my role. Our AGM, we are hoping to have that in January, and that could change. We'll see. If the membership is still thinks that I should be in there, then I'll still be in there. And if they have other ideas of who should be in there, well, that's awesome too. And then I'll figure out where I'm supposed to go and what I can do for the independence movement at that point. But right now, I'm the chief financial officer on the board of directors, and I sit on a few of the committees that we have as well.
So I know the election in Alberta is kind of, like you say, 2023. It's a few years down the road yet. But how confident are you guys of getting in and getting seats in the next Alberta election?
Well, you know what? There was a group of us that had a little backyard barbecue on Dominion Day this year. And a very well-known political scientist looked at me and said, well, Kathy, history is on your side. If you look at history, it's always that third party that tends to come up the middle and make government when nobody really expects it. And he's right. He's absolutely right. And we're hearing from more and more Albertans that we do need to make some big changes. And it's getting to the point now where enough people are ready to kind of put their inhibitions aside and just give it a shot. So I think we'll do it.
So changing course kind of a little bit here, we just had the throne speech here come up, and I liked how Michelle Rempel-Garner described it as a nothing burger. Yeah, I was already saying it sounded like a whole bunch of campaign promises before I even listened to her thing, and it's just like, yeah, that's exactly how everybody's taking it, is a whole bunch of campaign promises. It was just his way of getting a campaign thing going. And so I put it as we were recently blessed with a throne speech. So what are your thoughts and your takeaways on that throne speech?
Well, my biggest takeaway is Canadians can absolutely 100% look forward to an even greater socialist regime. That was blatant.
Yep.
They didn't even try to cover it up. That was blatant in there. And what frightens me is that not enough people see that to be as a problem. So it's not even so much what was in the throne speech itself, excuse me, that bothers me. It's how people are going to perceive it, or how they're going to hear it, or what they're going to take out of it personally that bothers me. Because that's exactly what it was. It was, we are well on our way to socialism, and this is how we're going to do it, and oh, it's going to be a utopia by the time it's all said and done. And that is not a good thing. It's just not a good thing to have a government, a federal government, talk about they're going to create jobs. Well, that's not government's role. That is not government's role at all. They're going to save the environment. That is also not the government's role to do. They're going to tax the rich and make sure that money is given back to the poor, but we're going to do it through a pollution tax, right? Is what they're calling it. No, that's wealth transfer. This is not time to play Robin Hood, you know? And so the fact that people don't see a problem with that actually bothers me greater than the throne speech itself, because socialist regimes always crash, always, without exception. And people generally, you know, they'll point to the few that we have right now that seem to be succeeding. To which I said, well, just wait. They won't. They're
North
going
Korea
to
is in the
implode.
process of it right now. Yeah, yeah.
Are going to implode. And when that happens, now we're looking at food lines and rations. And that's, I don't want Albertans. We work too hard to go down that road. We work way too hard, and we do deserve so much better. So that nothing burger, and that's exactly what it was a nothing burger. There was no strategy in there other than for a federal government to take even more control of the people's lives that are within this country. And if people do not want to see that, it's going to get awful very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah, I know we're starting to see some violence starting to pop up more and more, and I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward here. We're usually about a year behind the States in terms of a lot of things that happen, and look at what's going on there right now and how terrible that is. And I think you're exactly right. We can expect a lot more of that coming up in Canada here. And you're exactly right about the communist regimes. I mean, they always do crash, and everyone's always like, oh yeah, yeah, in a perfect world it works. I'm like, yeah, a lot of things work in a perfect world.
Well, that's just it. And even if you go back, my husband and I, we were just talking about this today. So many people say, well, you know, how can all of these theories about becoming a socialist regime and COVID playing a part of that? You know, we've all seen the videos, we've all seen the memes, we've all seen all of that. How much money, sorry, could people actually want? And it's not about the money. If you look at just within Canada, just within our country, to implement that socialist regime, which will become communist eventually. That's the progression every single time. It's never actually about the money, it's about the control, right? Mao didn't care about money, he cared about control. Hitler didn't care about money, he cared about control. Stalin didn't care about money, he cared about control. The Romans didn't care about money, they cared about
Yeah.
control, right? And so what do you do to get that control? Well, you get everybody under the government. Government pays for your wages, which then pays all of your bills, which then it all circles and cycles. And if the government crashes, well, so do you. So it's up to you to pretend to work, and it's up to the government to pretend to pay you, as they would say in
Yeah.
socialist and communist regimes. And if somebody just takes that time to read through the throne speech, that's exactly what's in it.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen the blatant disregard for any kind of concern for the people and what's best for them. It's whatever seems to be best for our leader. That's what we see him going forward with, and whatever benefits his family. So on that note, is there anything positive maybe we can take out of the throne speech?
I think so. I think something positive that we can take out of that is that Albertans, for the most part, will see through it. We're going to see through it. What the government that's in power right now forgets is we've already survived a 5-year recession. That's now a depression. That's a long time. And something you want to talk about history. Although Alberta's history as a province is very short, the people who first made Alberta, who immigrated here from other countries, came here for freedom. They came here for opportunity. They came here to succeed. They came here on a dream and 50 cents in their pocket, and they did something with that. And so that's in our blood. That's in our DNA. That's who we are as Albertans. So the positive to me that's going to come out of that throne speech is as Albertans really begin to listen and read and dissect it, they're going to recognize it for what it is. And they're going to go, wait a minute, maybe that Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta is onto something, and we should go get a membership and support them, and then we should get ready to vote them in 2023. So that's my answer.
So how overall do you think this is really going to affect the Western Canadians' feelings of alienation? Just from the different things he was kind of pushing in there and more of the same rhetoric. How do you think that is going to affect these feelings?
The folks that I'm talking to are kind of, we're over the whole Western alienation thing. We've just done with it. It's not even on the radar anymore because we're just done with Canada. So it can alienate us all you want. That's fine. It's only a matter of time now before we are not just alienated as you want to do. We're independent. So I don't know that for most of us, a good chunk of us anyways, that already were independence minded, doesn't matter. Just it's kind of a gift in a way because it'll help those that are sitting on the fence understand and realize that if we want any kind of a future for our kids and our grandkids, we're going to have to be independent. Don't worry about being alienated. Don't worry about the narcissistic spouse trying to make you feel bad for being amazing. Just go and be amazing. And that's it. So I think that's what will end up happening.
So I know Trudeau made all kinds of claims about his reasonings behind his proroguing Parliament, and there's a lot of things that are maybe the real reasons behind that. What do you think are maybe some of the real reasons behind that prorogation?
Oh, he hates showing up for work. That's the first reason. He doesn't know how to do that. And a lot of people have kind of questioning, why are we even paying him? Which is right. Anybody else would have been fired ages ago. I think his reasoning, as far as I can tell anyways, for proroguing it would have had to do with the whole WE scandal. To kind of try and put that on ice and get people to not look into it too deeply and maybe even forget about it. And then come out with this throne speech that would make it sound like, oh, look, we've got this fantabulous plan and everything's going to be great and it's going to be unicorns and rainbows, and don't look over at all these scandals that we've managed to, build up over the last several years. So I think that was why. It was getting a little heated. He didn't know how to handle it, so he did what he did. He went to his room, sat there for a little while until he was forced.
Had a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the main reason, and one of the things that he promised in that speech that he'd been promising throughout his whole term is, all these trees he's going to plant for the Green Initiative and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you've had how many years to plant trees and not one tree has been planted by you? So why do we think that that's going to happen? I, for one, doubt.
Yeah, right. And it's such a testimony to how empty his words are. So even though this throne speech holds all kinds of, and what some people might see as fabulous promises and ways of getting the economy going and helping people pay their bills and all of that, what's his track record? It sucks. It's awful. So what does it matter what the throne speech says? The only thing that's going to come of it is anything that's in there that is another means of picking Alberta. That part of it will come true, but everything else won't.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you maybe want to speak on or mention?
I would really, really like to encourage the folks who like to say that they don't want to play politics or get involved or even pay attention because they don't get or they don't understand it. I think now is one of those real pivotal points in history where we don't have a choice. We really don't. We cannot hide our heads under the blankets anymore. We have to pay attention to what's going on around us if we want there to be any kind of a future for, like I say, like our kids and our grandkids. So that's the one thing that I would like to leave with people. Don't be afraid of the information that's out there. Just because you're learning something doesn't mean you have to go get involved and run for some kind of office or anything. It just means that you're knowledgeable and you know for yourself what's going on out there so that you can make an educated decision for your own future. That's the whole point of this. So that's what I would like to leave with people is get out, get educated.
I always say research, research, research. Do your own research. Don't just believe what other people are telling you. Look for the facts behind it. Look into it. That's right.
Exactly.
When it comes to your life, ignorance is not bliss. Like it really isn't, especially now. So thanks for coming on, Kathy. It's been a pleasure and really enjoyed interviewing you here. And thank you for agreeing to this.
My pleasure. Thank you. I look forward to doing it again.
All right.